And welcome back, everyone, to Radio Row with Front Office Sports, continuing coverage of Super Bowl 60 alongside Dan Roberts and Baker Machado. And time to talk a little NIL, shall we? Let's bring in the CEO of OpenDorse, Steve Denton. Steve, good to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
I mean, your company has just taken off like a rocket ship over the last couple of years because of NIL and how it's infiltrated college sports. Just how big has this all been over the last little while for you guys?
I mean, it's kind of like the internet in 1999, right? I don't know if you guys were on the planet back then, but I mean, I had an internet company. I mean, you think about the beginning of the decade, college athletes are making nothing. End of the decade, they're going to be making $6 billion a year. So that'll be right below MLB and above NHL players. And in our platform, like we moved about $500 million through it last year, and the whole NIL market's about $2 billion right now. So, yeah, rocket ship, regulations kind of coming and going, and there's just a lot going on there.
Yeah, what regulations?
Yeah.
Steve, there's a whole cottage industry now for this stuff. Connectors, platforms, networks for NIL deals, connecting with agencies, and you guys have managed to quickly kind of gain some trust and be one of the legitimate ones.
Yeah.
But we have written about a number of these companies that are very fly-by-night. They crop up and they get deals with schools, and then suddenly they collapse. Yeah. So there's been multiplying, and then there's been consolidation already. When you look around the landscape, like, what are the problems that need to be solved, and why is this so ripe with this stuff?
Yeah, so let's separate like NIL, like real NIL, which brands pay athletes for name, image, and likeness, and then what schools will pay for you to play, right? Salary cap. So I think one of the things we do that puts us in a good spot is we don't issue a deal to an athlete unless that contract is funded. So I won't offer you a deal for a brand through the platform unless that brand's funded that. Because the worst thing that can happen, and I hear it from kids who work with other platforms, I did a deal a year ago and I never got paid, right? And then that just puts a black eye on the whole industry. So forcing people to pay up front, holding to the brand standards, and understanding the social audience is really important. But as far as the kids go, right, like that's the tough part. How do you keep them compliant, right? And it's not their full-time job. So we feel good about where we are, but we take a pretty high level view on that and say, what is good for the industry, and understanding there are three participants in that right now.
I know we were joking about, regulations with Congress.
Yeah.
Obviously, they'd have to figure something out in terms of getting some sort of legislation passed. But what do you sort of view the next 5 to 10 years looking like for this industry? Is it still going to sort of be the Wild West that it is right now?
Money's too big, right? So the House settlement will be helpful because it put a salary cap on what the schools can pay, and it's got natural escalators every year. So the next big one is when they reset the rev share. So the kids are going to participate in the rev share. So you'll see natural escalators to where that'll be $30 million per school by the end of the decade. And then, you've got NIL Go, which NCAA partnered with Deloitte on to do fair market value. So you stop paying kids $50,000 to come to your car dealership for a half hour, right? So that compliance is in place. And then the rest of it really is fair market value, right? Like as an athlete, your audience, what does Meta want to pay you to do a reel on Facebook groups, right? Like that's fair market value, and they don't care how many touchdowns you score or buckets you make. It's about your media value.
It does feel like there's going to be a big market reset, though, because when you talk about market value, it's all over the map as to who's going to hit. And, the college football season started. There was an ad with a certain quarterback, doesn't matter who, and it was some, fast food brand. We were seeing that ad like crazy. And then he got hurt, didn't play the season, and it took them weeks to stop running the ad.
Yeah.
And finally it stopped running. And, there's an awkwardness there a little bit because you're making a bet on something that's just so unsure. I guess you could make the same argument with the NFL, but these guys are still kids,
Yeah. You can make that argument with any athlete, right? You get behind any athlete. I mean, something could happen, right?
Although Mahomes is still Mahomes, even if he's missing the season.
Yeah. He's still Mahomes, like from a brand value standpoint. And that's kind of where I like to separate it. Brand value, like what does a brand want to pay you for your brand value? And then what does a school want to pay you for your athletic prowess? And that's going to be predicated on position. Like a P4 starting quarterback is making anywhere between 2.8 and $4 million right now. Running backs are making $800,000, wide receivers $800,000.
This is baseline.
This is baseline P4 starter.
But how much bigger is this going to get? Like, where do you sort of see this
Yeah,
continuing
that's my
to
question too.
expand?
Is there a ceiling?
Yeah.
Well, I think the salary cap, like if you think that 20.5 million salary cap that the schools have now, I mean, Ohio State needs like 35 million for the football team. A basketball team going to the Sweet 16, that's going to cost you 5 to 7, and a women's basketball team is going to cost you anywhere between 3 to 5. So, you already got a problem, right? So, I think you're going to see specialization. I think you've got schools that are going to be like, hey, we're going to be known as a basketball school. And you start to see that in the Big East right now, where they don't have big football programs or not big. They're
Right,
piling
double
money.
down on what you're good at.
Double, like Temple. Like Philly's a basketball town. Love Temple, but like double down on that basketball, man. And you put 7 million of that 20 million cap against basketball, you're going to have a squad. So I think you're going to see specialization. And I think the Olympic sports you're going to find them a lot at the Ivies that don't cater to the NIL
Well,
money.
that's the other thing is where's the untapped areas? And we hear Olympic sports is a huge, not just women's sports, but Olympic sports are sort of the untapped areas right now.
What's fascinating to me is if you strip out what the schools pay and just look what the brands pay, for every dollar a brand's paying for an athlete to be an influencer, female student athletes get 58 cents out of every dollar. They're out earning their male counterparts when you just go to brand dollars. One, they're better at it, and we could do a whole show on why, right? But they're just better. Like, pay more attention. They're better at it, and their audience is more engaging in terms of the influence they have on their audience. And I look, athletes have fans, influencers have followers, and I think you definitely see that when you look at what's going on in that landscape.
Yeah. Really fascinating stuff, Steve. I mean, this is such an fascinating industry that you're running right now. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
And stay with Front Office Sports for more on the business and culture of sports.